The ring would not let go. Amara stood at the riverbank as dawn broke over the village of Ikin, screaming until her throat burned raw. Blood ran down her finger, warm and thick, dripping into the water below. The metal band gripped her skin like teeth that refused to open. Villagers gathered quickly, their faces twisted with shock and something darker. Fear. The kind that makes people step back instead of forward. They watched as Amara pulled and twisted, her fingers swelling purple beneath the silver ring that gleamed even through the blood. Her skin looked burned where the metal touched it. Blistered. Angry red welts spread from her knuckle upward like roots searching for soil. "Get it off," she screamed at the crowd. "Someone help me." But no one moved. They only stared, whispering behind their hands the way people do when they witness something they don't understand but fear deeply. Then something strange happened. As Amara's panic peaked, as her breath came faster and her heart hammered against her ribs, the pain sharpened. The ring tightened. She froze, held her breath, and in that moment of stillness, the burning eased slightly. The ring was reacting, not to her pulling, to her fear. It had begun the day before. A day Amara wished she could forget, but knew she never would. The market was crowded that morning, loud with the sounds of haggling and laughter that never included her. Amara sat behind her small stall, selling the few vegetables she'd managed to grow in the stubborn soil behind her hut. A trader came by and offered her half what the yams were worth. When she protested, he laughed in her face. "Who else will buy from you?" he said loud enough for others to hear. The women nearby snickered. The men didn't even look her way. In Ikin, Amara had learned long ago that she was the kind of person people looked through, not at. She was plain. Too thin. Too quiet. Too unmarried at an age when most women had children pulling at their wrappers. As the sun climbed higher and her vegetables wilted unsold, an old woman appeared beside her stall. Amara hadn't seen her approach. She simply looked up, and the woman was there. White hair, eyes that seemed to see past skin and bone. She reached out and placed a silver ring in Amara's palm without asking permission. "This is yours now," the old woman said simply. Then she was gone. Amara stared at the ring in her hand, confused and uncertain. It was beautiful. Too beautiful for someone like her to own. Silver that caught light like water, smooth and cool against her skin. She slipped it onto her finger without thinking. It fit perfectly. The market continued around her, but something felt different. Changed. She couldn't name it yet, but the air seemed heavier, fuller. As the sun began to set and Amara packed up her unsold goods, the old woman appeared again. This time Amara saw her coming, walking slowly through the emptying market like she had all the time in the world. The old woman stopped in front of Amara's stall and looked at her with those ancient eyes. "Wear it always," she said, her voice calm and final as a closing door. "Remove it only when your heart is settled." "What does that mean?" Amara asked, her voice small. "What is this ring? Why did you give it to me?" But the old woman was already turning away. Within 3 steps, she had vanished into the crowd. Or perhaps she had simply become part of the shadows that gathered between the stalls. Amara looked down at the ring on her finger. It gleamed innocently in the fading light. The warning made no sense. Not yet. But deep in her chest, something whispered that it would matter. Soon. The next morning, Amara woke to shouting outside her hut. She stumbled to her door and found her neighbor, old Papa Chitty, standing in his yam farm with his mouth hanging open. The farm had tripled overnight. Where yesterday there had been maybe 20 mounds, now there were 60. Fat, healthy plants that looked weeks ahead of their natural growth. "The gods have blessed me," Papa Chitty shouted, dancing between the rows. Amara smiled for him, then turned to go back inside. As she did, a small child ran past, the one who lived 3 huts down. The boy who had been coughing for weeks, keeping the whole compound awake at night. He wasn't coughing anymore. His mother stood in her doorway, tears streaming down her face, whispering prayers of gratitude. Later that day, a trader Amara had greeted at the market came running back. He'd made an unexpected profit. Triple what he'd expected. He was shouting his good fortune to anyone who would listen. Amara watched it all happen around her, blessings falling like rain on everyone she'd been near, everyone she'd touched or spoken to, or even looked at kindly. But her own hut remained the same. Leaking roof.
Amipot.
Hungry belly. The ring worked. That much was clear. But not for her. Within 3 days, everything changed. Not Amara's circumstances, but how people treated her. The women who used to sneer now smiled when they saw her coming. False smiles. Calculated. They asked her to sit with them, to stand near their market stalls, to pass by their homes on her way to fetch water. The men who used to look through her now watched her carefully, tracking her movements like hunters watching prey. Children were pushed toward her by eager parents. "Greet Auntie Amara properly," they'd say, though they'd never called her auntie before. Papa Chitty brought her a small basket of yams. "For your kindness," he said, though she'd done nothing but exist near his farm. The trader who'd profited insisted she take a portion of his earnings. "You brought me luck," he said with certainty. But their eyes never held warmth. Only calculation. Only hunger for what she could provide. Amara understood the shift immediately. She had become useful. Not respected. Not valued as a person, but useful as a tool. A living charm they could position near their hopes and watch them grow. She smiled and accepted their false kindness because she had no choice. Because in a village like Ikeen, the useful were at least fed. But she knew the truth that most people learn too late. Use always comes before abuse. His name was Dubum. He wove baskets at the edge of the village, where the palm trees grew thick and the river whispered its secrets to anyone patient enough to listen. Amara met him by accident. Or perhaps by fate. She'd been walking away from another false smile, another calculated kindness, needing space to breathe air that didn't taste like greed. Dubum sat under a tree, his hands moving steadily through stripped palm fronds, creating something beautiful from simple materials. He looked up when she approached and smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. "Good afternoon," he said simply. She waited for the usual things. The questions about blessings. The positioning. The request to sit nearby while he worked. Instead, he just kept weaving. Kept talking about ordinary things. The weather. The river. The birds that nested in the trees above them. He never mentioned the ring. Never asked her to bring him luck or fortune or prosperity. He walked her home that evening, not because he wanted something, but because the path was dark and he was kind. They talked. Really talked. About her loneliness. His dreams. The small joys they'd each found in a world that often felt too hard. For the first time since the ring had found her, Amara felt human. Not useful. Not cursed. Just seen. Dubum came back the next day. And the day after that. And the one after that. Their friendship grew quietly, like plants that know how to find light even through stone. He taught her to weave simple patterns. She taught him a song her mother used to sing. They laughed together, easy and unforced. When he asked her to marry him 3 months later, he did it simply. No grand gestures. No promises of what she could bring to his life. "I love you, Amara," he said, holding her hands in his. "Will you be my wife?" She said yes. Her heart said yes before her mouth could catch up. That night, something changed. The ring grew warm against her skin. Not painful, but noticeable. Like a small fire held close. Dubum's baskets began selling faster than he could weave them. Orders came from villages he'd never visited. Traders sought him out specifically, offering prices that made him laugh with disbelief. Within weeks, he went from surviving to thriving. At night, Amara would wake to find the ring almost hot. Her finger ached in a way that wasn't quite pain, but wasn't comfortable either. She dreamed of flowing gold, of rivers made of light, of hands reaching toward her from darkness. The ring reacted to intimacy, to love, to the closeness they shared. And it fed on it. It happened in the village square on a market day. The same place where Amara had once sat invisible, now crowded with people who watched her every move. Dubum stood before her with a face she'd never seen him wear. Cold, distant, ashamed. "I can't do this," he said, his voice carrying across the square. People stopped to watch. They always did. "Do what?" Amara whispered, though she already knew. She could feel it in the way he wouldn't meet her eyes. "You bring luck, Amara. Real luck. My business has never been better." But he paused, and the pause cut deeper than any words that followed. "But I can't walk through the village with pride. People look at you and see the ring. They look at me and see a man who married for fortune, not beauty." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Soft at first, then louder. The women who'd smiled falsely at her now smiled genuinely at her humiliation. Dubum turned and walked away. He didn't look back. The moment he disappeared from view, the ring cooled against Amara's skin. Instantly, like a fire doused with water. Within a week, news traveled that Dubum's business had slowed. Orders stopped coming. His baskets sat unsold in the market. Prosperity ended when love ended. The pattern revealed itself with brutal clarity, and Amara understood. The ring had never been about giving. It had been about showing. After Dubum, the men came openly. No pretense of courtship. No pretense of love. Just transaction. A farmer named Obi married her within a month. The ceremony was brief, the vows hollow. He needed money to save his dying farm. She needed not to be alone. The ring grew warm that first night. By the end of the first week, Obi's crops exploded. By the end of the second week, he was selling more than he could harvest. By the third week, he stopped sleeping beside her. By the fourth week, he stopped coming home at all. One morning, Amara woke to find his side of the mat cold and empty. His things were gone. He'd left during the night without a word, without a goodbye, carrying his newfound wealth to a new village and a prettier wife. Then came Emeka. Then Chinedu. Then Ikenna. Each marriage followed the same pattern. Proposal. Ceremony. Wealth. Abandonment. The ring tightened with each betrayal. Not enough to draw blood yet, but enough to remind her it was there. Enough to make her aware that something was changing. Each man who left took a piece of her with him. Not her heart anymore. Those pieces were gone. But her hope, her dignity, the belief that she was anything more than a path to prosperity. Exploitation became routine. Expected. Normal. The pain started small. A dull ache that Amara could ignore during the day. But at night, when the village slept and she lay alone, the ache grew teeth. Her fingers swelled around the ring. The skin turned colors it shouldn't turn. Purple. Then greenish. Then dark, like old bruises that never heal. Veins appeared, spreading from the ring upward. Dark lines that looked like roots burrowing beneath her skin, searching for something to anchor to. One morning, Amara decided enough was enough. She sat at the riverbank where this had all begun and tried to remove the ring. Gently this time. Calmly. Without panic or force. She pulled steadily. The ring didn't move. She twisted carefully. Nothing. She tried oil. Then water. Then soap made from palm kernels. The ring remained fixed. Not because it was stuck, but because it was listening. And what it heard in her heart wasn't calm at all. It heard desperation. It heard anger. It heard the screaming fear she tried to keep buried beneath false peace. The ring listened to emotion, not force. It responded to truth, not pretense. And Amara's heart was no longer calm. Maybe it had never been calm since the moment the old woman placed the ring in her palm. The village began to change around her. Or perhaps Amara simply began to see it clearly for the first time. Men still came to marry her, drawn by stories of guaranteed wealth. But they came quickly and left quietly. Each disappearance added to the whispers. 5 husbands in 2 years, the women counted behind their hands. Each one rich. Each one gone. The men noted, shaking their heads. Children who used to run to her now hid behind their mothers when she passed. Parents pulled them away sharply, whispering warnings Amara couldn't quite hear but could easily imagine. The elders gathered at the village square and spoke in low voices. They looked at her differently now. Not with greed. With dread. She is not a woman, one elder said loud enough to be heard. She is a path that spirits walk through. A door that opens in both directions. People stopped positioning themselves near her. They stopped seeking her blessing. Instead, they avoided her eyes, crossed to the other side of the path when they saw her coming. Fear replaced greed. And fear, Amara learned, sharpened cruelty in ways greed never could. Greed still saw her as useful. Fear saw her as dangerous. And dangerous things must be controlled. Or removed. The dream came on the 7th night after her 5th husband left. Amara stood in a forest she didn't recognize. The trees were silver, their leaves made of light. And there, beneath the oldest tree, sat the old woman. She looked exactly as she had at the market. White hair, ancient eyes. But here, in this place between waking and sleeping, she seemed less solid. More like smoke given temporary shape. Why? Amara asked, her dream voice steadier than her waking one had ever been. Why did you give me this curse? The old woman smiled sadly. The ring is not a curse, child. It is a mirror. A mirror of what? Of hearts. The ring reveals what is already there. It rewards what it finds. The old woman stood slowly, her form flickering. When true love touches it, the ring blesses. When greed touches it, the ring feeds that greed until it consumes everything. Then why does it hurt me? Amara asked, holding up her hand. Even in the dream, the dark veins showed. Because you keep trying to remove it with the wrong heart. The ring will let go only when you choose yourself freely. Not from desperation. Not from fear. From truth. The old woman began to fade. Honest magic is the most dangerous kind, child, because it shows people who they really are. And most people cannot bear that mirror. Then she was gone, and Amara woke with tears on her face and understanding in her chest. The traveler arrived on a Tuesday, when the market was slow and the air heavy with coming rain. His name was Chukwu. He came from a village 3 days' walk from Ikin, carrying only a small bag and a calm that seemed built into his bones. Someone told him Amara's story. He listened without judgment, without the gleam of greed that usually followed such tales. He found her at the river, washing clothes alone like she always did. "May I sit?" he asked. She nodded, wary. Men who asked permission were rare. Men who asked without wanting something were rarer still. They sat in silence for a long time. Then they talked. About small things. The way the water moved. The color of the sky. The sound of birds settling for evening. He didn't mention the ring. Didn't position himself strategically. Didn't ask for blessings or favor. The ring remained cold against Amara's skin. Completely cold. Like it had been before any of this began. Chukwu came back the next day. And the next. They built a friendship slowly, carefully, like people who'd both been burned learning to trust fire again. He stayed in Ikin, finding work as a laborer. His life didn't change.
No saden bealt. No mera que les fortune.
The ring reacted only to greed. And Chukwu wanted nothing from her but her company. For the first time in 2 years, Amara felt something close to peace. The village elders called a meeting in the square. Everyone came. Meetings like this meant something serious. Something that required community decision. Amara stood in the center while they spoke around her, about her, as if she couldn't hear. The village suffers, Elder Okafor said, his voice carrying. Our prosperity has left. Our fortune dried up when the men stopped marrying her. She must marry again, another elder added. For the good of all. They'd already chosen the man.
Chukwu.
The traveler who'd shown no interest in wealth, which made him perfect for their purpose. A sacrifice they could make in good conscience. You will marry him by week's end, Elder Okafor told Amara. It wasn't a question. It was a command. That night, the ring burned. Not warmed. Burned. Blisters rose on Amara's finger, angry and weeping. The pain drove her to her knees. She tried to explain to the elders. The ring rejects this. It knows you're forcing it. It knows this isn't my choice. But they didn't listen. They saw only their own needs, their own dried-up farms and empty pockets. The wedding was set. The ring protested. And Amara understood with terrible clarity that the choice had always been hers. The ring had been waiting for her to make it.
Not them.
Her. Chukwu came to her hut the night before the forced wedding. He sat beside her while she wept, not touching, just present. I won't marry you, he said quietly. Not like this. Not because they demand it. They'll drive you from the village, Amara said. Then I'll leave. They'll call me cursed. They'll cast me out. Then we'll both leave. He looked at her finally. But, Amara, you need to know something first. He told her about the other ring bearers. 3 women before her, all from different villages, all given the same ring by the same old woman. Each one had used it differently. One hoarded the blessing, selling fortunes to the highest bidder until greed consumed her village entirely. One gave it away freely until she had nothing left, dying alone and hollow. The third tried to destroy the ring. It destroyed her instead. The ring doesn't belong to anyone, Chukwu explained. It moves from bearer to bearer, showing each village what lives in their hearts.
Greed. Fear. Exploitation.
The ring is a mirror, not a gift. How do you know this? Amara whispered. Because I was sent to find you. To tell you the truth before the ring does to you what it did to the others. Amara looked at the ring, seeing it clearly for the first time. Not as a blessing or curse. As a teacher. A brutal, honest teacher that showed people exactly who they were.